Tonight, you are about to hear 10 true stories, but not all of them should have been told. Some places remember things, some people disappear without a trace, and sometimes what you see is not what you survive. Listen carefully, because once these stories begin, there's no going back. The woman in the demolished house. A few years ago, my best friend and I experienced something very strange. At the time, I was 16 years old. One night, I decided to stay over at my friend's house. After spending the evening watching horror movies, we were both in the mood to do something exciting. Not far from my friend's house, there was a demolition site. It was a block of houses that had fallen into severe disrepair and were scheduled to be demolished in 2 days. The local authorities were planning to tear down the old buildings and replace them with new homes. The entire area was surrounded by fencing, and there were no trespassing signs posted everywhere. The doors and windows of the houses had been boarded up. There seemed to be no way to get inside. We decided to walk around the abandoned neighborhood and take a few random photos. My friend knew of a spot where we could get closer to the property. When we arrived, we noticed that all of the houses were tightly sealed shut. There was no way to enter. Then we spotted one house with an upstairs window that wasn't completely boarded up. We could see into the room through the opening. Using a phone camera, we took a photo of the window. Afterward, we went back home and started looking through the pictures we had taken. A while later, when we reached the photo of the window, we both froze. There was a woman in the picture. She was wearing a brown raincoat. Her skin was pale white, and from what we could tell, she had long black hair. The expression on her face looked incredibly sad. The strange thing was that when we took the photo, we hadn't seen any woman standing in that window. What's more, all of the doors and windows of the house had been boarded shut. To make sure we weren't imagining things, we went back to the house. After checking carefully, we confirmed that everything was still tightly sealed. The doors were closed. The windows were closed. There was no woman inside. The obsessed girl. This story doesn't belong to me. It happened to a friend of mine who lives in China. I'll call him Rita. This happened when Rita was around 12 or 13 years old. Rita was a very handsome boy, and there were quite a few people who liked him. However, one girl's interest in him went far beyond what anyone would consider normal. Let's call her Ayano. Ayano was much older than Rita. She was 18 years old. She was someone Rita knew, and she lived farther down the same street. At first, Rita didn't think much about her. That changed when Ayano started following him. Every day, every night, she somehow seemed to be watching him. Sometimes in person, sometimes online. The first time Rita began to feel uncomfortable was when Ayano started sending him more than 20 messages a day. "Are you okay? Take care of yourself. Sleep well." Messages like that. It was a little strange, but Rita didn't pay much attention to it. As time went on, however, the messages became much more disturbing. Instead of ordinary greetings and check-ins, she began sending highly personal messages. For example, if Rita skipped lunch, she would text, "You should eat your lunch." Or when his little sister started crying, she would send, "I think your sister is hungry." There was no way for Rita to understand how Ayano knew these things. At that point, he stopped using both his phone and his social media accounts. But the situation didn't end there. Rita's mother was often away from home, so babysitters frequently looked after him and his siblings. One day, a new babysitter arrived. It was Ayano. At first, nothing unusual happened while she watched him and his siblings. However, Ayano seemed to be developing a relationship with Rita's mother that was far closer than it should have been. One day at school, Ayano approached Rita and told him that his mother would be traveling overseas for a week. She explained that his mother had said Rita could stay at her house during that time. Rita hesitated at first. but it was supposedly his mother's decision. He felt like he couldn't refuse. Ayano told him that his mother had already left and that he could come directly to her house after school. Reluctantly, Rita agreed and went home with her after classes ended. When they arrived, Ayano's family wasn't home. What happened after that becomes a little unclear because my friend still gets emotional and frightened whenever he talks about this part of the story. According to him, Ayano would make him play very strange games. For example, when they played family, she would insist that she was the wife and Rita was the husband, and she expected him to act accordingly. Sometimes they played cops and robbers. Other times, she invented games to see who could get scared more easily. On one occasion, she blindfolded Rita and left him completely alone in a silent room for hours. 5 days had passed since Rita had begun staying at Ayano's house. One day, Ayano left for her part-time job. She locked all the doors behind her, and the windows were too high to escape through. So Rita spent the day sitting in front of the television, trying to pass the time. Then a news report appeared on the screen. It was a missing child announcement. The missing child was him. Before Rita could see the phone number displayed on the screen, the television suddenly turned off. When he turned around, he saw Ayano standing behind him with the remote control in her hand. Rita was horrified. He began crying and screaming. Ayano tried to grab him, but at the last moment, Rita managed to break free. He opened a window and started shouting for help. Fortunately, a couple happened to be walking nearby and heard his cries. They immediately called the police. About an hour later, the police arrived at the house. They found Rita inside Ayano's bedroom. He was blindfolded, and his hands were tied. Because Rita was still very young at the time, he never learned exactly what happened to Ayano afterward. The only thing he clearly remembers is seeing his mother holding him tightly while the police led Ayano away. After the incident, Rita and his family moved to Australia. He never saw the person who abducted him again. But even today, he says that hearing Ayano's name still makes him tremble with fear. The Dancing Man. About 5 or 6 years ago, I was living downtown in a large city in the United States. I've always been a night person, so after my roommate went to sleep, I would often get bored and go out for walks. He definitely wasn't a night person. To pass the time, I'd take long walks and just get lost in my thoughts. For about 4 years, I walked alone at night and never once experienced anything scary. I even used to joke that even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But everything changed in a single night. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning. I was walking near a park where police patrols usually passed by. I was pretty far from home. The night was unusually quiet. Even though it was a weekday, there was almost no traffic, and I didn't see anyone walking on the streets. The park, as always, was completely empty. On my way home, I turned into a short alley, and that's when I saw him for the first time. At the end of the street on my side, there was a silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange kind of dance. It looked a bit like a waltz, but at the end of every movement, he would oddly step forward. It was like he was dancing and walking at the same time, heading straight toward me. Thinking he might be drunk, I stepped onto the edge of the sidewalk to let him pass. As he got closer, I realized how strangely graceful his movements were. He was very tall and thin, wearing an old suit. He came closer and I could finally see his face. His eyes were wide open, staring wildly. His head was tilted slightly back, as if he was looking up at the sky. And on his face was an unnaturally wide, unsettling smile. Seeing his eyes and that smile, I decided to cross the street. As I crossed the empty road, I looked away from him for just a moment. When I reached the other side and turned back, I froze. He had stopped dancing. Now he had stepped 1 foot into the road and was standing completely parallel to me. He wasn't looking at me, but his face was still tilted upward, that same smile fixed in place. It made me extremely uneasy. I kept walking, but I couldn't stop looking at him. He didn't move at all. When I was about half a block away, I looked away for just a second. When I looked back, he was gone. For a moment, I felt relieved until I saw him again. He had crossed the street and was now crouching slightly. Because of the distance and the shadows, I couldn't see him clearly, but I was sure he was looking at me. Only about 10 seconds had passed since I looked away, so there was no way he could have moved that fast. I was in shock, standing still for a moment, staring at him. Then he started moving toward me again. This time, he was taking exaggerated, almost cartoon-like sneaky steps, but he was moving very fast. At this point, I wish I could say I ran or pulled out my phone, but I couldn't. I was completely frozen in place. The man kept approaching me with that smile until he stopped about the distance of a car away. He was still looking upward, that same grin on his face. When I finally found my voice, what came out wasn't what I intended. I wanted to shout, "What do you want?" But instead it came out as barely a whisper. He heard it but gave no reaction. He just stood there, smiling. Then, very slowly, he turned around and started dancing away, just like before. Even as he turned, his movements were still strangely unnatural. I watched him, making sure I didn't lose sight of him again. But a few seconds later, I realized he wasn't walking away. He was coming back toward me, and this time he was running. So I ran too. I didn't stop until I reached a brighter main street with cars and people. When I looked back, he was gone. I kept checking behind me on my way home, but I never saw him again. I lived in that city for another 6 months, but I never went on a night walk again. That expression on his face still bothers me to this day. The rich woman. In the mid-1980s, my mother was working as a cleaner in Australia. She cleaned houses in suburban areas, and sometimes she would also go to homes in wine regions or rural properties. To find work, she would leave business cards in local shops, and most of her clients came through that or through recommendations. One day, she received a phone call from a woman who said she was around 60 years old. The woman asked my mother to clean an old farmhouse. She had some strange requests. My mother usually preferred to meet her clients face-to-face before accepting a job. But in this case, the woman refused to meet in person. She said she would leave the key under the doormat. She sounded very wealthy, and she offered to pay much more than usual. So my mother accepted the job. On Monday morning, when she arrived at the house, even the long driveway gave her a strange feeling. The house stood alone in the middle of a huge, empty property. She found the key and started cleaning. About an hour later, she heard the back door close. The woman had said no one would be home, so my mother immediately felt uneasy. She stood still in the kitchen for several minutes. Felt like 3 to 4 minutes, but it could have been longer. There were no other cars on the property. She wanted to leave right away, but she still had 2 rooms left to clean, both bedrooms. After a while, hearing nothing else, she tried to convince herself it was nothing, maybe just something falling. She walked down the hallway and entered one of the bedrooms. On the bed, there were black and white photographs. As she got closer, she realized all of them were of her. Some were taken at family homes, others at different houses where she had worked. Some were even taken secretly through windows or over fences. My mother immediately used the house phone to call the police, then drove straight down the long driveway. Later, the woman was investigated by the police, but she kept claiming it was a burglary. After a while, the police stopped pursuing the case, and 4 months later we moved to another city. Chapter 6: The Man Under the Bed. I'm 22 years old, and this happened about a year and a half ago. I had just moved into my own apartment for the first time and was still settling in. The apartment door automatically locked itself when it closed. One day, I went down to the building entrance to check my mailbox while talking to a friend on the phone. After picking up the mail, I went back to my apartment and sat on my bed, opening the letters while still on the phone. I dropped my phone and it slid under the bed. I bent down to grab it. That's when I saw something that made me freeze. There was someone under the bed. My eyes widened and I forced myself not to scream. The person under the bed wasn't facing me. They were lying with their back turned toward me. Their head was lowered and I couldn't see their face. Thousands of thoughts rushed through my mind, but I tried to stay calm. I picked up my phone and said to my friend, "Sorry, I dropped my phone. I'm going to take a shower. I'll call you back later." The bathroom was right next to my bed. I quickly went inside, locked the door quietly, and turned on the shower. Then I opened the window, climbed out, and called the police. They told me to stay somewhere nearby and watch the building from across the street to see if anyone came out. It was daytime and still light outside. I hid behind a car and watched my open bathroom window and the building entrance. After a while, I called a friend, and he immediately came to meet me. We waited together until the police arrived. I gave them my key, and they went inside. A very short time later, 2 officers came out with a thin, exhausted-looking man. His eyes looked strange, but he wasn't trying to escape. The officer standing next to me told me that the man had been waiting outside my bathroom door with a knife he had taken from my kitchen. He had secretly entered my apartment while I was getting the mail and hidden himself under my bed. I was told that the man was homeless and was later sent to a psychiatric hospital. The open door. My girlfriend and I were coming home after dinner that evening. The moment we got out of the car, we noticed that our front door was open. I told her to stay outside and quickly ran inside. I went straight upstairs and grabbed the shotgun I kept hidden in the bedroom. I loaded it and started checking every room in the house one by one. There were no signs of anything upstairs. I went downstairs and checked the basement as well. Nothing. No one was there, and nothing had been stolen or moved. I called the police, and when they arrived, I explained everything that had happened. They carefully searched the house, checking both the upstairs and the basement. No evidence was found. They asked us if we were sure we had locked the door when we left. I wasn't completely sure, but my girlfriend insisted that we had locked it. The police said that even if someone had entered, they couldn't have stayed long, since there were no signs of burglary. My girlfriend was extremely scared and said she didn't want to stay in the house. I tried to calm her down. After a long time of tossing and turning in bed, I finally managed to fall asleep. But my sleep was suddenly interrupted by her scream. I looked at her, and she was staring fixedly at the wardrobe. In that moment, everything came back to me. I had forgotten to check the second closet. I looked at the wardrobe, and for just a brief second, I saw the head of a man sticking out. Then he quickly pulled himself back inside. Within 5 seconds, I grabbed the shotgun and aimed it at the closet. I shouted for him to come out, and at that exact moment, the closet door opened. But instead of surrendering, he ran straight toward the front door. I could have shot him, but I couldn't do it. He escaped and was never caught. I still believe that shotgun saved us from a much worse ending. The sounds in the closet and the eyes in the vent. About a year ago, I was still living in my parents' house. I started experiencing some strange things, especially in my room. One night, I was lying awake in bed when I heard a creaking sound coming from the other side of the room. My closet door had opened on its own. I got up to check, and there was no one inside the closet. Still, I instinctively checked anyway, as if someone might be hiding there. Of course, no one was there. I closed the door and went back to bed. Later that same night, I started hearing strange scratching and tapping sounds coming from the ceiling. It sounded like it was inside the air vents. It was really strange, but I didn't think too much about it and eventually fell asleep. In the morning, I told my dad about the noises I had heard during the night, but he didn't take it seriously. That night, I was lying awake in bed again, and it happened again. The closet door slowly creaked open. This time, I was genuinely scared. I was certain the closet had been fully closed. It would have required turning the handle to open. I carefully checked inside again, but there was still no one there. I tried to convince myself it was just a broken hinge or a faulty latch. That same night, I heard the tapping sounds coming from the ceiling again. The next morning, I asked my dad to check the closet door, but he said it was perfectly fine. He said it stayed shut properly and there was nothing wrong with it. He thought I probably hadn't closed it properly, but I was sure I had closed it correctly. That night, I decided to stay awake and wait, and right at the moment I was waiting for, the closet door opened again. This time, the sounds in the ceiling stopped. A deep silence filled the room. I turned on the light and looked toward the air vent, and I screamed. There were two eyes staring back at me from inside the vent. My parents ran into the room and asked what had happened. I told them everything, but they didn't believe me. They said I must have dreamed it or hallucinated it from lack of sleep. But I know it was real. The thing in the lake. I live in the Poconos region with my wife and children. About a quarter mile behind our backyard, there's a small lake. I used to take my kids there to swim often. Until last week. I won't take them there anymore. I haven't told anyone about this because I'm afraid they'll think I'm crazy. It was last Saturday. We went down to the lake and set up our chairs in the sand. Felt like our own little private beach. While my wife and I relaxed in the sun, the kids were playing in the water. I kept telling them not to go too deep. They were still small, one was 6, the other 8. We stayed there for about 2 hours. Eventually, my wife got bored and decided to head back home. I stayed a little longer with the kids. The sun was starting to set, and it was getting darker. The kids had drifted a bit too far out, so I called them back toward the shore. They didn't seem to hear me. I stood up and walked a little closer. Just as I was about to call out again, I noticed something in the water. It was a black, round shape moving slowly. It was heading toward my children. I immediately ran into the water, grabbed them, and pulled them back to shore as fast as I could. When I turned around, the thing was gone. My kids had no idea what had just happened. I just told them we needed to go home. Even after we got back, the feeling didn't leave me. I didn't know what I had seen, but it didn't look like any normal animal. Even during dinner, my mind was still at the lake. My wife noticed something was wrong, but I didn't tell her then. After dinner, I grabbed a flashlight and went back to the lake. It was already dark. I didn't even know what I was expecting to find. As I scanned the water with the flashlight, I suddenly heard a loud splash, like something had just come out of the water. I pointed the light toward the sound, and I saw it. I realized I had been wrong. There was a humanoid figure in the water, with long black hair completely covering its face. It was looking at me, or at least I think it was. I dropped the flashlight in fear and ran straight back to the house. I slammed the door shut behind me. I never told anyone about it. But that lake is only a quarter mile from my house. And who knows, maybe it's still watching me right now. And that was all the stories for today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe for more scary true stories. Thank you for watching, and take care of yourself. Because sometimes the scariest things are the ones we can't explain.